Welcome to From Our House to Your House, or in this case, my house to your house. I have today with me Jonas Kaufmann, the world-renowned tenor, and we're going to be in conversation talking about the operas that we've done together over the years. Jonas, welcome, and thank you for being with us. You were with us for your role debut of Don José in Bizet's Carmen,
Exactly.
an opera in French, and your languages are so fantastic. That's what sets you apart from your colleagues. You have such an ease in Italian, German, of course, but also in French.
I never had the lesson of French while I was at school. For some reason, my parents thought that I would go in the ancient history section or something. So I studied Latin and ancient Greek and stuff like that. And then I started studying mathematics, also a subject very important for this job. But nevertheless, I think I did my first French opera actually in France, Mignon in Toulouse, alongside with Susan Graham. And I realized very soon that unfortunately I can't sing and interpret and embody something that I just learned by a language coach syllable by syllable. And that was the point where I realized it's not the challenge to buy I don't know half a pound of ham at the butcher's shop in France, but it's actually really, really crucial to know almost every word and to be able to fully feel with that personality that you're trying to create. But yeah, well, I mean, the Carmen obviously was a challenge, as you said, my first time, and Covent Garden is maybe not the place to hide when you do it for the first time. So somehow it was a hop or top event, and thanks to you, it seemed to be on the successful side. No, it was great fun, and the French language is beautiful to sing in. It has somehow a very noble, elegant style in it, other than German, or if I may say, also English. It's somehow, it feels elegant the minute you start talking, and even though you don't understand a word, it still wraps up some kind of nobility, and that helps enormously for the vocal challenges of such a part. But of course,
and I would imagine that the vowel sounds and the nasal aspect probably gives a nice tangy resonance to the voice. Is that true? Yes or no?
Yes and no. You see, on one hand, it really helps to project your voice in the mask, if that's what usually the professors used to call it. But the second you do a little bit too much, it's the opposite actually, because then you're losing the body control. Then the whole voice falls to the front and sits here, and it's not really helpful anymore. I don't want to mention any examples, but there have been also tenor colleagues who gave the impression that the whole sound came through the nose, or maybe through a hole that they tried to drill in between their eyebrows. So that would be too much French.
Well, let's listen to the nobility of your line, and of course, let's not forget the incredible warmth and passion that you show in this clip, the flower song from Act 2 of Georges Bizet's Carmen. Jonas, I think one of the biggest decisions for a lyric tenor to make is to sing the role of Cavaradossi. And it's not for everybody, but if your lyric tenor voice has the capacity for that extra metal and extra dramatic thrust, it's just a no-brainer. It's something they're waiting for the tenor voice. You came and made your role debut with us in the role of Cavaradossi, and it was incredibly successful. And I think you've sung it all over the world. Can you tell us a little bit about that role?
Yes, of course, that has been a role that since then has been a part of my core repertoire. It's, I mean, everybody knows it's a beautiful opera, and it's, I mean, this second act is written like the accompaniment of a crime scene, a thriller at cinemas. It's incredible the way he described these situations there, Puccini. But yes, it was really quite a challenge. I mean, I had done so far at that point some Verdi parts, but that was the first major step in the Puccini repertoire, and it is a different story. It is that the phrases are longer, the stretch is bigger, the accompaniment of the orchestra is much more intense. So you really need to push your way through somehow. And even though now it feels like a lighter part, at the time it was an absolute landmark and challenge for me.
So did you feel some of this? Did you feel a greater than stress on your voice, and how did you manage that technically? I mean, I think you have to be very, very clever when you make that kind of move. Is that true?
Yeah, it was, and I have to say, when I sang the part through the first couple of times, I wasn't sure whether it was such a wise decision, because you see, the voice needs to get used to it. And for instance, in the love duet in first act, when he then out of the blue starts on a B flat, Mahavinci, that's, where should that come from? And I thought, why didn't he write just one note before? So, but to just start on that. But it's, of course, it is sheer beauty, and it has really from the first moment with you. I mean, I remember very well, we had rehearsals, and you were sitting in the cafeteria in Covent Garden. And when we were talking about recordings, famous recordings that we do like, and we mentioned Corelli, and I said, yeah, of course. I mean, it's great, but you see, I mean, you could say that sometimes he passed the line of good taste, but somehow I try to wrap it up, but to give the chance to say, no, don't hold the notes too long and everything. And your answer was, I do not agree. No, if you hit the note like that, hold it for forever. And I was like, okay. It makes you feel much more comfortable alongside such a conductor.
I think one of the very, very important things about this role is that his last aria is so well placed in Act 3, and it is truly one of the greatest hits of the Puccinian repertoire and of all Italian opera. E lucevan le stelle, thinking that you're going to die, you look up to the heavens and you remember Tosca. There's declamation, there's a throbbing vocalism there. Let's listen to this clip. After Carmen in 2006, Jonas, and Tosca in 2011, in 2014, you came and took what I think is one of the biggest risks for a tenor. But I can't imagine anybody else singing it today the way you sang this role. And that's the role of Des Grieux in Puccini's Manon Lescaut. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yes, Des Grieux, another Puccini, you could think, but that's not true. For some reason, this one sits much more uncomfortable than all the others. And I remember talking to Placido about that he mentioned Otello is nothing compared to that. This is really the challenging role. And at that time, I hadn't taken on Otello, but I couldn't believe that he was right. But somehow, for a voice that has, like his and maybe also mine, this lower, darker sound, this Puccini sits particularly uncomfortable high, and it's really, 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 really long. And when you think of the last duet alone, well, the tendency is that you just give too much, because I mean, we all know that you're overwhelmed by the music, and somehow you think, okay, I give tonight, it's a good night and everything is fine. I give this little extra push. If you do that with that part, it's probably the end of the story, because it's just
you have to be strategic. I think when you think of the Act 3, the final scene of Act 3, and there you're giving the maximum you will ever give in your entire career, probably. Yes, I think you're right. But you do start out lyrically, and that's the wonderful thing. We're going to hear the aria Donna non vidi mai. You've just seen this young girl, and you are flabbergasted and full of ardor. And again, it's a very short aria, but extremely telling. And of course, going up to the all famous B flat that is such a feature of most of these tenor arias. Listen to this. The following year, you came back and made another role debut, Andrea Chenier, the title role in Giordano's opera. And I love this opera so much. I love the music. I love the libretto. And of course, the character is a gift to any tenor, somebody who is standing up for the rights of the people, and but who is in political trouble throughout, even from the beginning. And you managed this role with such class and such romantic fervor and such style, because I think the Verismo repertoire, and this is not really a Verismo piece, one of those the realism operas, but because it's set during the French Revolution, but it has a kind of vocalism that tends to be that, if you're not careful, can be rough, and but the way what you bring to it is such refinement as well as thrust. Can you tell us about this role?
Yes, I mean, first of all, it's a dream come true to sing that part. To be honest, I mean, I don't know. I mean, how this guy wasn't able to write another 35 operas of that caliber is a real shame, because everyone wishes to hear more and more and more. but somehow his best shots were all in that same opera. But it's really, really amazing. I mean, when you count it, you have 3, maybe even 4 arias. You have those 2 magnificent duets with the soprano, and another long duet with the baritone. It's fabulous. I mean, and if I would be to pick one of these pieces, I wouldn't know which one to choose, because the final duet, oh God, the Come Beldi, and it's like, oh no, it's this, no, it's the improviso. This is really a best hits all in one evening. It's fantastic, and of course the possibilities are that you can use every inch, every angle, every aspect, every sound that you can produce, because there is so much going on there. I mean, there's so much anger and hate and love and passion and joy and fear, and it's all there. So why not use it and make the sounds that are the most natural or the most convincing, probably according to the situation, and also matching probably to what the composer had in mind. So it's not that you have to bend yourself to and force yourself to do something. So, oh, I want to bring another color to this. It just happens naturally, because this music is written extremely naturally, and it flows on such a high wave that I think you can't make mistakes by taste-wise. Let's say it's just there. It's a perfect guideline, and it's been a magical production, I have to say, really.
Oh, I'm so yeah, I'm so happy with your excitement for this opera. Thank you. Now join us to watch a clip of Jonas and Eva Maria Westbrook, his Maddalena, in a working session with myself. With the quality of singers that I have, and pushing for something that is quite special, acting-wise, voice-wise, communication-wise with the audience. Even if we don't understand the language, we understand the sentiment. That's what I'm after, that the sentiment is always clear. I want to see these 2 characters tell me something. They have to be as dramatically convincing as possible. They can't just look good. So Jonas, in 2018, you made the ultimate jump. It's amazing how you've tested yourself over the years, certainly at Covent Garden, building, probably building towards the role of Otello. Let's say it how it is. And you finally reach the top of the mountain. Otello is a role that strikes fear into most tenors. And a lot of tenors just don't have the color of voice, the type of voice, to be able to satisfy all that Verdi demands from the singer. It's a tremendous acting part, and it drives the singer to the ultimate limit of the vocal possibilities, but also the dramatic possibilities. We have since gone on to record this opera. It hasn't been released yet. It's just about to be released, and I'm so excited about it. But tell us about your first go at doing it on the stage.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is the Mount Everest or whatever. Even though I'm using the time now to prepare Tristan, another one of those challenges. It's like Othello, but just double size or somehow. Um, but somehow you can get away with a lot of things that you couldn't with Othello. The intensity, it is maybe the last act in Tristan is similar to that, but at least at Verdi, unheard of. It is spectacular, amazing, charged with an enormous power of emotions and of darkness. And this is something, of course, everyone visions his ideal sound, maybe his ideal recordings and everything. So I don't know what Verdi had in mind. Well, I know he had Tamagni in his ear, and I'm not sure whether this was his first choice. But the challenge at the time was there was no other role comparable to this Othello. It didn't exist. And only later, 10 years later, probably with Puccini, it started a whole new chapter, and a whole new generation of singers had to be created in order to achieve what the new composers had in mind. But Verdi definitely was a first for this, and therefore, since there was no demand, no market, there were no voices, or nobody searched for that kind of voice. And so I think we are probably much closer today to the ideal interpretation of Othello's part than we were at the time. Maybe we're losing a kind of some nobility, something that we our modern times make us see things much more realistic and much more direct and harsh and brutal. And of course, even though Othello was probably the first opera also from Verdi, but in general, where you could see the brutality and the animal behind the human being for the first time. It was still probably with a little bit more distance than we see it today. But this part has its own personal challenge. And I think it is not so much the note for note or word for word or phrase by phrase. It is this powerful, dark energy that sits in the pit all the time, and that gives an enormous stress on your mental status, and that in the consequence also on your vocal approach, because you are under pressure all the time, and that's what makes it so difficult. There are not many moments where beauty really is necessary. Most of the times, maybe apart from the love duet end of Act 1, it is only truth, and the truth is very naked and often ugly and not beautiful. But nevertheless, I mean, it is a fabulous, a breathtaking journey that we did take on a couple of years ago, and just recently for the recording, and I can absolutely assure you, when I started singing, this was one of my dream come true challenges, to maybe reach one day, but I was quite sure it would never ever happen. I was scared to death, and even when we started the rehearsals on stage, it is a different story when you sing it in the room, when you rehearse it, when you practice it. But when you're on stage, when you try to embody this character, it does something to you that you tend to lose control. And of course, this is something very dangerous. On one hand, great for an actor to say, okay, so here we're very close to realism. But since we're not only actors, we're also singers, we have to take care of our instrument and really calculate. I think we mentioned that before in other parts, but I mean, this is the part where you really know each note that you sing wrong and approach wrong, you will have to pay for it, because there's no way that you can get out of this without that damage be heard, at least in Act 4. So it was really, really something extremely special, and I'm very happy that alongside of all these other role debuts that we did together at Covent Garden, this was probably the climax. I mean, we did many more productions. I did my first, oh God, what was it? La Rondine there with you back in, I don't know, '04 or something. But since then, it's been just an absolute standard for me that whenever there's a part that brings me up to another level, to a next step, that has the joy, the passion that is needed, but also the risks involved, I was always referring and trying to refer to you in order to make it happen together, because I always felt in best hands, and I felt understood, because I believe somehow we tick in the same way musically, and that makes things so much easier.
Well, I really appreciate that, Jonas. Thank you for those kind words, and thank you for giving us a look into this extremely complex mission that is to sing Verdi's Otello. Let's listen to some of this.
Avrei portato la croce crudel cantasse e dunque con calma fronte ira segnato al
La Forza del Destino is one of my favorite Verdi operas, and I grew up with it, and I don't know, I have just a real soft spot for it. I think you do too. Is that true?
It is, yes. For some reason, I mean, we've been just talking about Otello, and of course, this is the maximum challenge. For some reason, definitely not for the length of opera or for the long phrases or for the high notes. This is definitely in the Verdi repertoire, Forza del Destino, because this Alvaro is a tour de force, especially in the second half. But the music is so beautiful, and this is exactly what I was talking about before. Here we have a similar situation. We have threats on death. We have people who hate with hatred and who try to kill each other, not only once, but several times. So it's really, really, really intense. But at the same time, we have this nobility. We have this incredible elegance. We have this friendship between enemies who try to kill the other one, with weapons of nobility. I can't say it in other words, but I love it. I have to say it's fantastic. I mean, and Verdi's music makes it perfect to understand the drama and the tragic between the two hearts that beat in them. The one that tries to get rid of his enemy, and the other one that tries to embrace a friend.
These Italian operas, Forza included, let's not forget that the provenance is, of course, originally the bel canto, and there are always elements of bel canto, and certainly in this one. But I think the highlights, I mean, besides your amazing Act 3 aria, are the duets with the baritone, and there are several of them. Let's listen to Solenne in quest'ora, together with Ludovic Tézier as Don Carlos.
Mi stringo al cor mio, amico filote del cielo, filote del cielo.
La Forza del Destino was, of course, Jonas, not a role debut for us. You had done it before in Munich. And the last opera you've done with us is certainly not a role debut. The importance of it, though, is enormous because we've been begging you for a long time to do a German role in this house. And of course, I'm talking about Florestan in Beethoven's Fidelio. This 2020 being the Fidelio year, an incredibly important project for us. But it's a very, very unusual part. You only start singing in Act 2, and you start with your aria. So it's amazingly challenging, and it demands different things from you. And of course, your sense of poetry, the way you are affected by the words and how you say them, is a mark of your artistry. And certainly when you're singing in Italian and French, we hear and see that to an incredible degree. But of course, in your own language, in German, that is certainly 100-fold, I would imagine, and the feelings. Can you talk to us about this tortured soul that is Florestan?
Yes. Well, it is an unusual piece. I mean, we all know that it's a solitary piece, the only opera that Beethoven ever wrote, but he wrote it several times because he wasn't happy with it. What we usually perform today is the last version. But still, it is an incredible stretch between the formality of the time that he tried to follow. When you look at the second act, for instance, as you say, there's my aria, but after the aria follows a duet, after the duet follows a trio, after the trio follows a quartet. So it's a very classical set of numbers interrupted by text. And at the same time, we have music, harmonies, and also vocal challenges of a completely different world. So he pushes limits forward enormously in any way. I mean, the orchestration is different, even though of course it's not the huge orchestra that we all know today. But with the limits of the time, he made an incredibly impressive, dark and strong and enormously intense orchestral sound. And
what does it mean for you as a singer to be singing always with a message? Beethoven's way of writing an opera is to convey a message to the audience. That it must give you a tremendous power as a performer, no?
Yes, I mean, of course, as a performer, you tend to try and see or reach the truth in interpretation, meaning that you really feel what this person feels, that you are, these words are yours that just popped up in your head. And when you have these phrases that as you say have a message and they to be carried out, it's just it makes it easier and harder, because on one hand, of course, you can just use the message and bring it out. On the other hand, you have to make the audience believe that this is your message, that it comes, that this enormous range of thoughts comes from within yourself, and that is really tough to make believe, and combined with the vocal challenges that all of the singers, and especially Leonora obviously have, it feels different because you feel naked and at the same time covered. It's awkward, but of course, I mean, I've done this part so many times, and it feels absolutely natural and normal. But when you think about it, suddenly the doubt comes and said, why do you actually think this is the way it should be? It can be completely different, because it is, of course, on the way of all the development of opera, and at the time where it still falls apart in bits and pieces, and it's an enormous challenge to put them together and combine them seamlessly, even though it's interrupted by 2 or 3 minutes text. And that is something that since the times of Beethoven and Mozart, we are not used to. And it makes things much more difficult because you have to start from scratch each and every time. And there's nothing that can cover things up. And it's just each gem has just to perfectly fit the necklace, let's say. And but I think you've done a great job, and everyone agrees that this necklace should be part of the crown jewels.
Jonas, before we go to our final clip, I just want to thank you so much for your generosity and for your insight and your artistry, even when you talk about what you're doing and not singing. Thank you. I personally and all the ROH family really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Very, very much.
Thanks to everyone to make that possible, and to finally at least get a glimpse of your face and your voice, even from a distance. And hopefully we'll soon be making music together and hug each other afterwards like we used to do.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Let's talk about your singing. This Gott that you talked about.
Welch dunkel hier.
You approach it speaking from very far away, from almost deep inside you.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think in realistic terms, none of this can be real. I mean, if he's really imprisoned for 2 years, where would all that energy come from? Most of it is he's hallucinating.
Even the idea that your vision of
That it just somehow
seeing
you can actually see it when you
Leonora
get
as an angel of salvation.
Und spür ich nicht Linde, sanft säuselnde Luft. Und ist nicht mein Grab mir erhellet. Ich seh wie ein Engel im rosigen Duft sich tröstend zur Seite mir stellet.
It's amazing how he has an ability to create melodies that seem like inevitable and almost spiritual.
Euch werde Lohn in bessern Welten. Der Himmel hat euch mir geschickt.
Beethoven's Fidelio is an incredible symbol for revolution, for freedom, to equalize people.
It's a utopian idea of friendship and that we help our brother. That's part of the message. Look at our world today, is so divisive. This message speaks probably as strong today.
Yeah.
Plus ça change.